Kia ora, I'm Chelsea Daniels, and this is The Front Page, a daily podcast presented by the New Zealand Herald. Local government is how communities democratically decide what happens in their backyards. It could be the park on the corner, what day our bins go out, your neighbours making too much noise, how much you pay in rates, or whether your dog can enjoy the beach off lead. Every day we encounter a council decision whether we know it or not. So why is voter turnout always so low? There are 78 local authorities in New Zealand, 11 regional councils, 12 city councils, 54 district councils and Auckland Council, which combined 8 former councils in the big super city amalgamation of 2010. That means there are a lot of roles up for grabs. To dive into what you need to know about this year's local elections, today on The Front Page we have Newstalk ZB News Director and local government reporter Michael Sergel. Michael, do we know anything about what voter turnout might be like this year and how it compares perhaps to previous years?
Yes, we've already got some numbers. As of last week, about 18% turnout, which was compared to about 10.5% at the same time last time, which is a positive sign. Voting is quite a bit higher in rural and provincial areas and Māori wards than it is in general metro areas. That's normal. That happens every time as well. We've got much lower turnout in Carterton and much higher turnout in Wairoa, but that's also just because small population centres tend to buck the overall national trends. And looking at the latest metro numbers from this week, some cities with lower voter turnout last time, like Hamilton and Wellington, are seeing a really huge improvement this time, but there's no real change in those two big cities, Auckland and Christchurch.
And so what are the percentages? What are we looking at?
So we're looking at, it varies between city and city. Christchurch tends to have the highest turnout, about 25% so far, but the others, it's in the teens.
I did hear an interview on ZB recently and they were like, oh, we're hoping for 40%. And everyone was like, that is abysmal. But 40%, if we're looking at like 2025, and that's one of the highest, 40% is a good benchmark.
Yes, 40% it would be a pretty good turnout for most centres, particularly given it's a postal vote. You don't get the same engagement that you get at a central election, particularly because we don't have the polling day and as many polling places as we would for a general election.
How many votes have been cast thus far?
So we don't have sort of complete official numbers for the whole country, but yeah, as I say, as of last week, about 18% of people had returned their voting papers, which is a really positive sign compared to that very low turnout we saw in 2022.
I read your article where you delve into the more than 200 people who will be elected unopposed this weekend. Tell me about these numbers.
Yes, well, I mean, it may seem like a lot. I've been analysing about 7,000 council races over 5 consecutive local elections. That's specifically mayors, councillors, local board members, community board members, anyone who sits around a council table and makes those decisions about what the council should be doing. And consistently across every single election, more than one in seven people are being won just by winning that race just by standing in the race, which may seem like a lot, but it's actually been trending downwards. It's trended down by about a third since 2001, and every election it generally tends to be lower than the last election. We've got 3 of Christchurch's councillors, 2 of Auckland's already elected, and more than half of councillors on some councils have already won their seats just by filling in the application form.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, is it because people don't understand what local government does, perhaps?
Yeah, there's a range of factors potentially at play. Certainly abuse and harassment does put a lot of people off. Low pay, because some of these positions might only get paid $10,000 and it may be 30 to 40 hours a week of work for some people. So that definitely puts some people off as well. But then, we're talking to the Gisborne Mayor, Het Stoltz. She's saying that often that's also a sign that people are happy with their current mayor or their current councillors. And so no one stands against those people because everyone quite likes them. We've got the case in Auckland with Desley Simpson, who's very popular in her ward, so no one has stood against her. We've got 2 of the major mayoral candidates both committing that they would like to appoint her their deputy. So in many cases, it's also a sign that people are popular. And I mean, it's much lower than say the United States. We've got much more unopposed races than the UK or Australia, but much fewer than the United States. I've actually looked at what's happened in the US, and I mean it's more than it's almost 2/3 of mayors and more than half of councillors in the US are unopposed. So they win by default. So we're certainly not in that kind of situation. But then there's also the counter-argument from some people that perhaps we have too many roles. If all these positions are going unopposed, maybe we need to reduce the number of local government roles and have a bit more competition for those roles.
Do you think there are any councils around the country that can perhaps be amalgamated, like the super city situation back in 2010?
We've had two really good examples in recent years with Christchurch and Banks Peninsula amalgamating, and then Auckland's big amalgamation, and people have divided opinions on those. But there are also calls in Hawke's Bay, in Wairarapa, and Southland for amalgamating a local government. And there's also places where you might look at a map and you wouldn't know where the boundary line was between Wellington City and Porirua, for example, or between Nelson and Tasman. You could look at a map and not know where those council boundaries are. So perhaps, there may be a case for amalgamation there as well.
Are there any roles around the country where there are actually no candidates?
Yes, actually, and this is something that happens every single election. Many roles have no candidates. This election alone, we've got positions on community boards in Whakatane, Wellington, Rotorua Lakes, New Plymouth, Rural Hastings, Hanna Springs, Mackenzie, Gore. These are jobs that absolutely no one stood for, that no one
So what
wanted.
happens?
So they have to be filled because, they're roles that have to be filled. So they're subject to by-elections, most likely next year. The local ratepayers will then have to pay for those by-elections, which will cost tens of thousands or potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. And ironically, these by-elections tend to be far more competitive than the main local elections because people suddenly realise, there's these jobs up for grabs. And so ironically, you often have multiple people standing for a role that no one wanted in the first place. Yeah. Which is ironic. And that's hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of salaries that no one has applied for, which is unheard of in any other industry right now.
I mean, do you need any prerequisites to put your hand up?
There's basically no sort of standards you need to meet really. If you're not in prison and you win. Well, I mean, if you apply, if you pay the money, then you can take these roles and I suppose represent your local community.
The qualities that I'd love to see from our elected members:
vision, passion, a can-do attitude, and pragmatism.
And they absolutely need to be able to build consensus to get decisions made.
Elected members are essential for Auckland because a wide range of perspectives is needed to guide our governance.
They represent the people of that community. They know the communities, they know the issues, and I think it's a very, very good model, very important model to encourage local people to stand for their local bodies.
So at the moment, looking at the local elections 2025, I mean, I'm sitting there on Saturday. What elections are heating up the most? Where do I watch?
Yeah, there's a number that I think you should look out for. I mean, obviously we've got Wayne Brown in Auckland, Phil Major in Christchurch, George Raddick in Dunedin, and Nick Smith in Nelson, all seeking a second term, all elected on that blue wave last time. In Wellington, we've got Andrew Little, most likely, according to the latest polling, winning the Wellington mayoral race, but lots of interesting candidates in that race, some sitting councillors, an ice cream chain owner, a silly hatter, and even a clown standing in that race, all hoping to be mayor. And in Hamilton, we're getting a new mayor, a bit of a generational battleground happening there as well. You may remember Ben Bell, the mayor of Gore, who considered resignation after surviving a no-confidence motion after that rift with the CEO.
That's right, and he was the youngest last time.
And he was the youngest last time as well, and he is seeking a second term. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Nearby in Invercargill, we've got Nobby Clark, who obviously came under a bit of fire for some comments at a public event and also some comments in an interview with Guy Williams. So he is now retiring. His brother Andrew Maxwell Clark is standing for Mayor of Invercargill, and he's also standing for Mayor of Tasman. Then we've got another Tasman Mayor who's standing for 5 mayoralties in 5 different parts of the country.
How can you do that?
You can. You can. Both of them are well within their rights to stand for multiple different mayoralties. So we've got one guy standing for 2, one guy standing for 5, and I suppose they pick the one that they want the most if they were to win multiple races.
Is that because they own different property around the country or something?
You can just stand in multiple elections.
You can?
And some people do. This guy in Tasman has stood for those 5 mayoralties last time as well. So he's a repeat candidate. In Kaipara, we've got Craig Jepson, the self-described Trump of the North. He's the guy that sort of enforced a ban on karakia in council meetings. He also stopped climate change work. So he's actually stepping aside, but he's endorsing his deputy who has sort of a similar vision. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. We've got some long-standing mayors standing down. We've got some well-known names standing. Oscar Kitely, Real Housewives star Anne Bartley-Burton is standing as well in local boards. And we've got a comedian, Jermaine Ross, who's asking people not to vote for him, but he's obviously a well-recognised name in the community too. And you may remember Michael Organ, who was the subject of David Farrier's 2022 documentary Mr. Organ. He is standing for a council seat in Whanganui. And in Wairoa, we have one councillor who is hoping to get elected. He's campaigning for the council to get involved in the cannabis trade. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets any support around the council table if he is elected on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, why does that comedian not want anyone to vote for him?
So he says, he's told Ryan Bridge on Herald Now a few weeks ago that basically it was a bit of a dare. And so he lost the dare, he's standing, but he's asking people not to vote for him. He's just hoping that his campaign, I suppose, sort of attracts a bit of interest in the local board races, which are really important around Auckland and often get, as we say, have really low voter turnout, but they matter a lot. Yeah.
Well, Zelensky was a comedian. He got nominated and he got put into the big role. I read a piece in Newsroom from Mark Dolder examining 1,000 council candidates. You've gone ahead and done 7,000, but they did 1,000. And it shows candidates for local and unitary councils are overwhelmingly older. They're men and they're white. Does this come as a surprise to you?
Absolutely not. If we look through the candidate list for the last 2 decades, consistently, there has been an overrepresentation of European New Zealanders, of men, of older people, and that's been across almost every part of the country. There's a new demographic survey of those standing in Auckland this year, and that shows a decline in Pacifica, a decline in New Zealand European, but still overrepresented. There is an increase in Asian candidates standing, but they are still vastly underrepresented at the local level. And we've also seen a trend. The number of women standing has actually started to drop again. So we saw that rise, over decades.
Yeah, I remember that was rising at one point.
And we've seen a lot of women mayors, a lot of women councillors, but the number of women standing for those roles is starting to drop again. And a key factor of that, talking to a lot of women in local government, is the abuse and harassment they receive, which tends to be higher for women than it is for men.
What have they told you?
Well, we certainly know that there's a lot of sort of gender-based harassment and abuse, and that can be very intimidating. It's kind of worrying if we're seeing things sort of trend in the opposite direction, and we're seeing women vastly underrepresented at the local government level.
Yeah, I remember that survey that came out of former female members of parliament saying about all of the abuse that they got on a daily basis, and it certainly does beg a question on whether, the public needs to calm down a bit against women.
And local government New Zealand surveys have actually found a similar thing at the local level, and we've had a number of councillors actually resign or retire from local government in recent years because as women they received a lot of abuse.
Yeah, has anyone kind of backed out of the race because of that this year?
This year, I'm not sure aware of any examples, but certainly in 2019 and 2022, and even back in 2016, we had councillors saying, "I've had enough of the abuse," and women councillors saying, that they were being targeted so often and they just had enough. And it wasn't worth it for the amount of money they're receiving, for the amount of, I suppose, positive, feedback they get. There was just so much sort of overwhelming negative sort of abuse and harassment. And also people forget that a lot of these elected members, they're only one vote around the council table. And there's only so much they can do about a lot of these issues. A lot of things are in the hands of central government. And even as mayors, a lot of the power is diffuse. So they can set the media agenda, they can set the council agenda with their budgets, they can, I suppose, lead a lot of the council meetings. But even as mayors, they're only one vote around the council table, and the council can only do so much itself as well.
What does the council do?
So councils do lots of things. I mean, most significantly, I suppose, the roads, the three waters. The sewerage and the water supplies, the parks, the libraries. Most of the things that we use on an everyday basis, like everything that we need to leave the house. If we do leave the house on a day-to-day basis, we need the councils to be running those things. And whether you're a ratepayer or a renter, which is an indirect form of ratepayer, you're paying for those services. And in recent years as well, we've seen rates go up quite significantly in some parts of the country, by up to 20% a year in some places. And that definitely sort of affects households that definitely haven't seen their incomes increase by that much. And
tell me about what happens this Saturday.
So basically, if you haven't already sent off your vote in the post, you're going to need to take it to a voting place. That's supermarkets, that's libraries, and also council offices. You can also cast a special vote at some of those places as well. Then at midday Saturday, those ballot boxes will be closed strictly at midday. The vote counting of those ballot boxes will begin. We will start to get some preliminary results. They're indicative. They tend to be sort of follow through to what the final results are, but they're not official. Those results will start coming through from 1 o'clock, 1:30, and through the afternoon and evening, and they will tell us most likely who has won those key races, the mayoralty races, the councillor races, and to some extent the local board, community board races as well. Some of those results may change if there's some really close races, and we saw that last election with some of those sort of councillor races, ward races in some of the big cities, but we will know most likely the mayors of our largest cities on Saturday afternoon, and we will have all of those results throughout the afternoon on Newstalk ZB and at nzherald.co.nz as well.
Looking forward to it. Thanks so much for joining us, Michael.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode of The Front Page. You can read more about today's stories and extensive news coverage at nzherald.co.nz. The Front Page is produced by Jane Yee and Richard Martin, who is also our editor. I'm Chelsea Daniels. Subscribe to The Front Page on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts, and tune in tomorrow for another look behind the headlines.